Welcome to the Contrarian Capitalist podcast. I'm delighted to be joined today by David Materazzi, investment research specialist and CEO of the automated trading platform Galileo FX. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Robert. It's great to be here.
We were having a really interesting conversation off air before we pressed the record button, and I think that this could go in a number of directions, but really we're going to be looking at things such as sound money, individual liberties, also fake versus real capitalism, and then we'll have a look at what the markets have been doing and what's going on behind the scenes. Uh, David, I thought the best place to start would be real versus fake capitalism, because I'm sure most people understand what capitalism is, but
Yes.
you like to dig into that a little bit more. So why that term and what's the difference?
So I think, it's pretty clear once you once you tell people, but somehow these things look confusing. So I totally understand because it was confusing even for me many, many, many years ago. Capitalism, what does it really mean? People think capitalism is like this angry and bad boss that's making money out of your work. That's a Marxist definition of capitalism. Okay, capitalism can be good, can be bad, like everything, right? And can be true and can be fake, because some important people, they take advantage of the confusion that citizens and the population has, for their personal advantage. So if I would have to define true capitalism, I would say that it's number one, it's voluntary. So it's like real democracy. You have your money and you decide how you want to spend it. It's very simple, right? It's like you vote with your dollars or your euros or pounds, whatever it is. You vote for a certain product. I like this product, I like this service. Here is my money, right? It's like it's voluntary what happens to your money, right? So you have freedom to decide how you want to spend your own money. And that's so the first thing of true capitalism. And the second one is competition. Competition is like the heart of capitalism. If you don't have competition, by definition you don't have capitalism. So that's free market capitalism. And what the free market capitalism does is like it's the best benefit for the final user, which is like us, the citizens. Why the best benefit? Because it's the most choice at the lowest price. Right? Companies are going to compete with each other. A lot of companies, hopefully, not just 2, 3 companies, but we're going to get to that later when we talk about the fake capitalism, right? So, but you have a really active, dynamic marketplace in any industry, any product, any service. The user is going to benefit the most, right? Because all these companies, they have to compete between each other to win this money from the user, to get the vote, as we would say, the analogy from the user. So fake capitalism is also called Cronyism. I think that's how you pronounce it. So involves bailouts, and we've seen it after the great financial crisis of 2008, GFC, right? Where the Obama administration, I don't want to blame Obama or whatever, but in general, Washington, they saved these banks that they had all these issues, like on Wall Street. And even people didn't like that. So even somebody, who doesn't have any understanding about economics or politics, they see that something's wrong, right? When Washington is saving all these big banks, something's wrong. Why are they not saving a small, pizza place, family business? They don't have any bailouts. But these huge banks, they took the risks. They participated in the marketplace, but they were saved. But that's a long story, but you get the idea, right? Did you know that, like in the US, taxpayer money, $100 billion a year, goes to big companies for subsidies? So this is not you voting with your own money. This is the central planners in Washington saying, give us your money and we are smart and we will make all the decisions and we will give it to this company or to this other company. So basically you are giving up your freedom with your own money that you worked for the money. That money is coming somewhere. Maybe you made some good investments or whatever. You inherited it, whatever it is, but it's your money. It's yours. They say, give it to us. We're going to give it, to this guy or to this other guy. And I don't want to make, make names, but you get the idea. Electric cars, all the subsidies. Some companies are built on this, and this is not real capitalism. This is fake capitalism. Something's wrong. Something is wrong when you see a CEO more in Washington than at the factory, or participating in, or talking to customers. Why is the CEO not talking to customers, understanding the market, understanding what's the best product? Because sometimes that's not how you win. Sometimes you win by knowing the right people in Washington, right? The so-called central planners. So that's fake capitalism. That's like the worst, even worse than communism, or like that level, right? That's like an abomination. It's like a transformation that's not how it's supposed to be, right? And that can be fixed. It can be fixed with regulation and stronger laws, stronger penalties for people, so that it separate these things. Washington shouldn't intervene into the general, let it the market sort it out. That's the basic definition. Fake capitalism, it's like a shadow name for some kind of Marxism. The central planners. We are smarter than everybody. We make all the decisions. You are stupid. Give us your money. We're going to make the decisions for you, or for your good and for everybody. That's the story. The other story is competition, and you do what you want with your money. You let the market sort it out, and it's going to. And I believe in capitalism, free market capitalism, and I think that would be like a much better system for everyone. It's not going to benefit just a bunch of rich people, like fake capitalism.
Yeah, it's a sentiment I definitely agree with. And I know that, talking of capitalism and social structures, you actually mentioned off air about authoritarianism and how that's actually growing, but not
Yes.
many people might see that. So do go over those stats that you were sharing for authoritarianism.
Yes. So people don't know. And I was also shocked about this stat. So authoritarianism is actually rising globally. 70% of the global population is living under some form of authoritarianism. And what does it mean? Or semi-authoritarianism. But you get the idea, right? So it means that only 30% of the world population actually has, individual liberties and freedom of speech and these kind of freedoms that we in Europe and in the US and whatever, in the first world, we give for granted, right? Oh, this is, the world is getting better because we see ourselves, maybe we have a little more of that, even if that we can talk about it, right? So that's a huge concern, right? If you have authoritarianism, you cannot have any kind of freedom. It doesn't take a genius to and less freedom, also, less prosperity for everybody if you believe in free market capitalism. So everything is really connected in a very specific way. And many times you see countries succeeding and countries doing well, other countries not doing well. It's not really about the people who is smarter. You wouldn't say like a British or, I don't know, a Danish person is smarter than, I don't know, another country's person. It's really about the system that these countries use, the system. If you use the wrong operating system, it's like an operating system. If you use, it's going to be much harder even if you have the smartest people or even the most money. It's not really about even natural resources. You have countries with the most natural resources, they are not doing better than other countries that have zero natural resources. So it's really about the system, right? When you start looking at countries, you understand, you see Japan, okay, you see Switzerland, I consider those, great systems, okay? Even if they're not perfect, because no system is perfect, okay? Don't get me wrong. The American system, it gets more into the politics side of it, but I consider it a much, better system than anything they have, for example, in South America or Africa or even Asia, if you take out Japan. But I don't want to offend anyone. So this is not about any kind of, it's not about the single person. It's about the system, that's being used, right? The US would be like deplorable country if they used the wrong system, right? Somehow, the founding fathers or whatever, the history, they picked, in my opinion, the right system. But even the right system, it's vulnerable. It has some weak points, right? And people, they're going to take advantage of these weak points. So that's why we should maintain the system, right? Because it works, and we should guard it, like we are guardians of this system instead of letting it corrupt, right?
Hmm.
So another interesting stat, it's freedom of speech, right? Freedom of speech. I have this theory, which is not really my theory, but I found it's like research, but I like to say that I found it earlier. So freedom of, why is the US the number one country in the world for innovation? Why is the US leader in the world for technology, like Silicon Valley? Is the US leader in the world in finance? Why? One of the theories is freedom of speech. Freedom, if you have ideas, freedom of exchange of ideas, right? And people can exchange ideas, can debate things, can discuss things, even inside a company, right? You have this directness. You have like healthy growth. You have healthy innovation. You have to, that's, results in innovation. So you could probably do a study and check the countries that have the lowest, freedom of speech rights at the lowest, of the chart.
Hmm.
Probably it's going to correlate really strongly with low innovation. That's not an accident. It's not. Why is China not able to innovate? Because there's no freedom of speech. And what's the latest innovation coming out of Iran? Nothing. Zero. There's no freedom of speech in Iran. No innovation. Very simple. So it's somehow it has some grounds. Of course, take everything that I say, with a grain of salt. I'm just throwing ideas. Sometimes I could be wrong. So I don't want to come here, saying, oh, this is the absolute truth. But these are interesting, point of views that you don't hear often. So I like to just put it out there, and then people can, the listeners can make up their own mind. But these are, these statistics, they are facts. This is not my opinion, right?
Yeah, I think on that, and again, it's one thing I'd push back on China is that I would say, because I've got a friend that lives over in China, is that there is quite a lot of innovation, but maybe it's become from people giving ideas to the state, and then the state is handing those ideas down rather
But
than.
innovation, yeah, China, but I mean, really, because I mean, I could be wrong. People can fact check me, but the train, that high speed train they have in
Mm,
China, it's engineered in Germany. It's a Siemens made train. All the electric car technology, it wasn't there before Tesla went to China. I remember exactly, when Tesla went to China, they were just the only company in China doing electric cars. I'm pretty sure about it. So, one could say China plays the game that lets these companies in, and then they steal intellectual property, which is, you don't have to believe me to it's pretty, under the sun. I think they would admit. I mean, you walk in China, as far as I from what I hear, they have entire shops selling cracked software with fake licenses and serial keys. So there's just no culture. It's not about people. It's not about, they're not bad people. Okay, it's not that the Chinese are bad people. That's not what I'm saying. It's the culture. It's different. The system is different. So people act inside the system. People grow in a certain culture. And that then results in what, the entire country does with their own economy. That's, the point of view.
yeah, I think that's fair actually. To be honest, I think if we look at the way that China operates, and I've said this before to people, when I look at my own country, the UK, I'll get onto freedom of speech in a minute because that's yeah, that's going downhill. But I look at for example, if a country wanted to build a railway, for example, now in the UK we've got so many bad examples of millions and billions being wasted on X, Y, and Z. Whereas, and I think that some of that comes down to the political system and the structure, like you talked about. Whereas if you go into China, because of the way China is set up in general, they could go, right, we're going to build a railway between, I don't know, Beijing and Shanghai. I know there's one already, but I'm just using these cities as examples. Oh, we're going to build a new railway between Beijing and Shanghai. Right, this is the route it's going to take. Yeah, we need to get rid of all these people and all their houses. We'll relocate them. Off we go. We don't need any permission. And about 3 days
Yes.
later, it's built. So I think that comes down to what exactly you were saying, David, when we're looking at the structures in which people and governments operate. And again, no system is perfect. And I quite admire the Chinese system, the fact that they can actually get stuff done because,
Yes.
and I enjoy that to be honest. So, yeah.
I see your point of view, Robert, and yeah, I mean, the Chinese system, it has worked, we could say, very well.
Mm.
But the question here is, can it keep working? Is it sustainable over decades and centuries, right? Because one could argue even the USSR, certain years, certain decades, they were on par, they were like almost, same level as the US. But then somehow it didn't, they couldn't sustain this system. The system was not sustainable over time, and it broke, right? Because that's what it does. So China, from what I hear, it's really hard. It's really hard to get information, okay, about get data from China because of the system, the CCP, they manage all the data, the communist, party, Chinese party. So the Chinese Communist Party. So from what I hear, they are not doing that well, Robert, right now. I don't study China. I tell you, I don't have all this information. But the question is, the US, it went through everything, like world wars and pandemics and depression and all kinds of financial crises. And every time it comes back stronger because the system works. The system is able to sustain all these obstacles. China, when did they start using this pseudo-capitalist communist system? I think maybe 30 years ago.
Mm.
We don't know. Is it going to work for 200 years, through 300 years? Maybe yes. Maybe they will win the race against the US and they will become the number one superpower. Maybe their system is actually strong, or maybe not, right? So it's really hard to say. It's really hard to say. But their system works in general for infrastructure, as you said. So for people like living everyday life, life in China is so much better than their parents and their grandfathers and grandmothers, so much better. I mean, and probably nobody would argue that they were living better in China before before the recent years. But we were talking about individual liberties.
Mm.
And in China, you don't have freedom of speech. You don't have your basic, like for us, we consider them like basic rights, right? In Europe and in the US. But for them, they're not even basic rights. For them, it's like, oh, I wish I had that right. I wish, it's like a dream to have that right. So that system has a price that the capitalist system doesn't have that price. The capitalist system doesn't ask you to give up your rights. It doesn't ask you to. Actually, it's the opposite. It asks you to use your rights and to use your freedoms. So it's a very different, point of view. And of course, I'm a capitalist, 100%. I'm not shy to admit it. I don't believe in central planning at all. And I believe in freedom and natural rights, that we are born with certain rights, and state cannot take away your rights. Very simple. Nobody can take away the rights that you were born with. We are born in the natural world. We have natural rights, right? It's not that the state is so generous and so good and it gives you these rights, like, oh, take these rights, and be thankful. No, that's the wrong point of view. The right point of view is everybody is born with these natural rights. And some natural rights, you cannot be a slave. And it doesn't matter where you are born, but like slavery is not acceptable, right? You have a right to not be a slave. You are born with this right? So that's the cost. That I'm not saying that in China you have slavery, but if you have to, say, China, they have way, way, way fewer protections for workers, as far as I know. Okay, in the US you have more protections for workers, and they say they are communists, right? So that's the irony.
Yes, that leads us nicely into talking about all of that is again going back to my homeland, the UK, and I think they're certainly trying their best to take away freedom of speech. And again, I won't go into all the politics behind that. People that follow the channel know what I talk about. But it seems to me, though, David, that and I get exactly what you're saying. You've got different systems, different countries, different structures, and that's all fine. There's no perfect system. There's no right or wrong as such. We're both advocates for the capitalist side, of course, which is great. But it does seem to me that, and you mentioned about the rise of authoritarianism, it does also seem to me as well that we're seeing a rise towards socialism, creeping back in as well. And again, I go to some of the examples of things that are happening in the UK, maybe across Europe as well, to be fair. And I think that that is also quite dangerous. And I think people, maybe younger people, have no idea what they're letting themselves in for if they continue to push down that route of we want socialism, we want this. I think that's dangerous. What do you think?
Agreed, 100%. And now we're gonna convince anybody with this argument. But I agree 100%. I agree 100%. So freedom of speech, I once listened to this Stanford professor, right? Because I like to listen to really smart people. I listen to Justice, US, Judge Justice Scalia, from the Supreme Court in the US, and they talk at length about these issues. So I like to pick my sources, well. And one thing they were stressing is that it's very easy to protect speech that you agree with. That's, requires no effort. It's very, it's natural. But if you really believe in freedom of speech, you have to protect speech that you don't agree with. Then we're gonna see, everybody will see, is there freedom of speech? Are you really for freedom of, because it's easy to say, oh, I believe in freedom of speech, but as long as you agree with me, as long as you say things that I agree, that's not freedom of speech. So even at the US Supreme Court, they had a case. They had many, many cases about freedom of speech. One of the cases was, can you burn the American flag? Is it freedom of speech or is it a crime to burn, like to keep flames, with a fire? The justice, even like personally, even let's say you are a justice, one of the 9 justices at the Supreme Court, and you have to decide, right? And your decisions, they affect culture for decades, okay? There's like huge impact because Supreme Court decisions, like they set the basics, like what for the future. They set the future. So even if you don't agree with it, it doesn't mean that you should override what's written in the Constitution. Your job as a justice or as a judge is to respect the law and what's written by the people, what the people want, what the people voted for. If you, as a judge or a justice, you override, because you think it's wrong, because you think that burning the American flag is wrong, and you're just doing a poor job, and you should be ashamed of yourself. So what's the hardest thing? If you really believe in freedom of speech, you should accept things that you don't agree with, right? You see, I don't know, Palestine, whatever, flags and protest. Some people agree with it, some people don't agree with it. They should be let protest. You cannot say, no, I don't agree with this, so we suspend freedom of speech. That's not how it works. Freedom of speech should protect, especially speech that's controversial. That's controversial speech. That's the speech that needs most protection, Robert. Like, if you think about it, it's easy to protect mainstream opinions. They don't need any protection because they already widespread opinions. Opinions and views that are extreme, they need the most protection from the freedom of speech rights point of view, right? So burning the American flag, guess what? It's totally legal. It's like the Supreme Court ruled that you can burn the American flags. That's freedom of expression. You are expressing your views. Yes, I don't like it. I don't agree with it. I would never do it. I would never even think about it. But it's not that if I don't agree with it, if I would never do it, it means that I should force other people to do the same as I do. That's not how it works. That's not why we have rights. Rights exist for people to have different point of views and just exercise their rights. They had cases with the KKK. You have to look at these extreme cases to really understand what freedom of speech is. And freedom of, once you see the extreme cases, then everything suddenly makes sense, right? But now in the UK, as you were saying, I hear a lot of horror stories. Honestly, it's been a long time that I haven't visited the UK, and I'm a little afraid to go back, if I have to be honest, because I had these amazing memories, and I want to keep the memories intact. But I hear a lot of people, I hear of people, police going to homes of people just because they wrote something on Facebook or X. I don't know if it's real or not. Maybe you know, Robert. But if that's the case, that's really scary. That's scary, Robert.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm just going to bring up, because I had a friend sent something through the other day. So I'm just going to bring this up because this is a very good example of what we're just talking about. But going on the fact that people are being put in jail, people are, being spoken to by the police for,
That's crazy.
yeah, and it is true. So it sounds odd, but it is very, very true. I'm just going to bring
Yeah,
up
I
this
believe it. I believe it,
article.
but it's crazy. I mean, like, it's
Yeah.
crazy to think that it would happen in the UK, which was like once at the in the front of these human rights. And honestly, I don't want to sound racist or anything, okay? But we have to say things like they are. You see a lot of acceptance for a lot of minorities, even if they are British minorities, okay? This is not about nationality, it's not about the skin color. So don't try to catch me in some kind,
Mm.
not you, Robert, but anyone. Don't try to, that's not what I'm talking about. You see a lot of, openness towards a lot of cultures, minorities,
Mhm.
without making names, but you can guess. And then you see this kind of really harsh and, in a sense, violent, because police coming at your house, your neighbors see it. I don't know, your wife, your family, your kids. So even if you haven't done anything wrong, they're just here to talk. It doesn't look good. Like, you feel like bad. Yeah, it's bad to your reputation. It's bad to your. Let's say your boss is just driving by, sees like this police car. You're talking to. He's gonna ask,
Mhm.
yeah, why are you talking to them? So just the fact that you get this kind of treatment, people, they resent it, even if they're wrong. It adds to the tension. You know what I mean? It adds more, fighting, urge in people, that they
Mhm.
don't
Mhm.
accept this. They see, why are all these minorities, of based on whatever sexual preference or whatever it is, right? Religion, ethnicity. Why are these people getting all these preferential treatment, that everything they do, basically they can do it because we are a free country, blah blah blah. And then me myself, I cannot even post my own opinion on my own profile, right? Even if people are breaking the law, I can see the confusion in the minds of the people, right? Because they see that the law doesn't make any sense, or maybe the laws are applied based on political agenda. What about that?
Mhm.
And now we are breaking, now we're telling people really how things really are in this world. Guys, not all laws are applied the same way, okay? Some laws, they are applied, to the letter. Other laws, they are completely ignored. And politicians, they decide. Even local politicians, they decide. They actually can instruct the police, these kind of things. You work hard. These other things, you ignore. So basically, there is no real democracy, because the people never voted for this. The people never said this law is more important than this other law. People said this is a law and it's the same,
Mhm.
but somehow it gets corrupted. It gets corrupted by whom? Politicians.
Yes, there's a lot going on in the background. I think we were only scratching the surface on things that are really going on in the background. David, I've just found the thing I was looking for, and it's
Oh, yeah.
basically, so this is from the 4th of August this year, and this is if you are a UK citizen. Apparently, if you travel abroad more than 3 times a year, you're going to automatically be flagged to the government because they're going to do some more
What?
checks about how you can
For
afford it,
what?
etc., etc., etc.
Oh my God.
I know.
To any
So
country? Any country?
don't matter if you go to France,
Oh my God.
Germany, South America, if
What?
you leave the country.
So
Yeah,
imagine,
yeah.
the waste of taxpayer money to check all these innocent people just going on vacation, going to visit their family, friends, or going out. I traveled to the US 5 times a year, just for conferences and business and meeting clients. They would check me, right? I would have to, waste the time of these police officers or whoever is going to check. I don't even know who's going to check it, but somebody's going to check it, right? These people are not the taxpayer payroll. We, with our own taxes, are financing these useless checks. And then maybe they don't go and check the real bad people before, it happens, the real criminals or the real terrorists, right? That's where you should allocate resources if you're the state, like to real threats. Somebody traveling 3 times a year, you're telling me it's a threat? It's some kind of threat? For what?
It's mad. Anyway, that was the example. So that is, I believe
Yeah,
that's
but
actually coming
that's
in.
crazy. Yes.
It really
Yeah.
is. There's two ways that this conversation I think can go. I think number one, I just wanted to summarize what you were saying about free speech. And again, a lot of the listeners are from the United States of America and North America in general. So hopefully, this could resonate with a lot of them of given views of what's going on in Europe, for example. But I'm hoping that, free speech is important regardless. I think, we don't have to, there's a lot of things that I see that I don't agree with, that I don't like. But if you're going to respect the rights of people to voice their own opinions, then that's fine. And I think linking back to structures, as we were talking about earlier, what I find funny, and maybe this is a UK point of view, is that we seem to have this thing where if anyone starts talking or mentioning anything to do with things that are on the right hand side or the far right hand side of the political spectrum, for example, then it's a no, we don't like it, we've got to stop that. Yet at the same time, you mentioned Palestine. Let's not get into that because we'll get banned from
Yeah.
YouTube. But at the same time, people that are spouting about, whatever's happening between Israel and Palestine, that seems to be acceptable. Whereas I just find that it's basically what I'm trying to say is, to me, it all seems like double standards. And
Exactly.
my whole point of this, David, is to talk about the size and influence of governments, because this is something I think you wholeheartedly agree with, that I think a lot of our problems, whether it's financially, and let's get into the finance, that a lot of it is to do with the size of government and
Yes.
what they're wasting taxpayer cash on. And I think all of that's led to what we've seen in the last few years. It's led to inflation and it's led to dangerous financial times, which normally leads to dangerous times with regards to war. The history playbook, it's gone before, it's happening now. It's not very pleasant, but again, all we've got to do is study what's happened before us. I'll stop ranting. I'll leave it with you with the microphone
I
to pick
agree
up on that.
100%. I agree 100% on all points. I would add that the freedom of speech and freedom of expression is basically the fundamental right from where you then all the other rights, grow from, right? If you don't have freedom of speech, then like by consequence, you cannot vote, right? Like voting is like an expression of your freedom of expression, like it's like the result of your freedom of expression. If you don't have freedom of expression, then you can't even vote, you can't even manage your own money. That's sounds like communism and Marxism and socialism, right? Systems where people just stripped of their rights, especially the freedom of speech rights. Why? Also because freedom of speech can be dangerous. Freedom of speech can be very dangerous to these systems. They don't want people to talk. They don't want people to exchange ideas because they are afraid that people start talking between each other and then they're gonna organize and they're gonna make a big change, right, to the system. And they're gonna understand how really. So they have to, repress, freedom of speech. But yeah, so small government, big government. I think in general, what you can observe that larger the government, the fewer the liberties, fewer the rights that you have. There are some exceptions, right? The US is some kind of, exception because I consider the US, not just me, but like a really high ranking on rights, and freedoms. But also the US has a pretty big, government, federal government. So, but what is keeping everything together? Why is it the exception in this case? Constitution in the US Constitution is like, it's like, it checks a lot of things. It's like the balancing thing between all these things, because anything that happens, you can always go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is going to base their decisions on the Constitution. It's called the Constitutional Court, right? So the Constitution is like, that amazing document that in the US they have, and that's one of the biggest, luck that you can have as a country, that you have such a strong constitution written black on white. That's it. Everybody has to, respect the Constitution. It's very simple. If you don't respect it, even if you are the president of the United States, we can sue you and bring you to Constitutional Court. And then we're going to see who's right and who's wrong, right? A lot of rights, they were actually, implemented later after the Constitution, even in the 60s, like the Miranda rights. You know the Miranda rights?
No,
it's when the police arrest you, they tell you, everything you say can be used against you. You have a right to a lawyer. Before, somebody like this Mexican worker, who's like normal person, right? He got arrested. They didn't have any law about these wars that he has to. So he didn't know about his rights. He had rights, but he didn't know. He didn't know that he had all these rights, that, right to stay silent, to not, whatever. He sued, and he went up to the Constitutional Court. Constitutional Court says, you Mexican worker are right, and the police and the state, they arrested you, they're wrong. Then they forced everybody in the US, even today, now, as we are talking, probably they're arresting somebody in the US, right? And they are saying to them, the Miranda rights. But how was he able to force the state to use this, to say these rights? He was able to do it because of the Constitution. If there was no Constitution, the state would push their fist against the small citizen. Yeah. Constitution is there to protect you, to protect even a desperate person, illiterate person. Doesn't matter. You have rights, and the state cannot take away your rights. Nobody can take away your rights, right? So that's the thing. Big state, big control, and fewer rights. I see it like that. And there are some exceptions, okay? Also in the economy, big state, it's a problem. Why is it a problem? Because you're giving up prosperity, right? The moment you give money to the government and you tell them, okay, you make the decisions, you decide how to allocate all this money, what should we do with all this money, you are basically giving up half of your prosperity as a country. Can you believe that? Because there have been many, many studies. I mean, I don't have to convince anybody, but private entrepreneur, they have to make the numbers, square. How do you say? Like they have a balance sheet, right? They have to make the numbers, make sensical. So they're gonna make good decisions about, how much does it cost to give this service? How much does it cost to produce this thing? The government, they don't care. They can print money. They can tax people. They can be as inefficient as they like. They don't have anybody, they don't go bankrupt. But the small entrepreneur, he goes bankrupt. He has a lot of trouble. Maybe he ruins his life. His credit is destroyed, everything. The government, they don't care. Of course, it's going to be inefficient. They don't have the right incentives. As Warren Buffett says, show me the incentive, I will show you the result. Mm-hmm. Government doesn't have the incentive to use money, taxpayer money, wisely. They have the incentive of getting more votes at the next election. That's the incentive, So we're going to give more money to this group of people or to this other group of people or to this company, blah, 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 because, I need their vote. Not because it's good for everyone. So the private entrepreneur, they can do whatever the government does, whatever is healthcare, transport, almost half of the price. There have been studies about it. The government spends $2, a private entrepreneur makes $1, and he can even make a small profit for himself. Even if it's 10 cents, 5 cents, that's the price. That's the cost to society, basically, right? That's a good deal for everyone. Just let these people compete. Don't, create fake capitalism. We go back to what we were saying, right? Mm. So small government, you as a small government, you don't produce anything. Government cannot produce anything. Government can only transfer money from one pocket to the other. They cannot produce, they cannot make. Even if they try, it's going to be inefficient. It's going to take 10 years. and it's going to cost 3 times. And everybody is going to agree with this, right? Even if you don't agree with other things, everybody knows that a state is inefficient when they spend money, right? It takes 3 times and it's spent 3 times. So let's just let private, people. When we're talking about private sector, these are just people like me and you. It's like people having an idea, putting their mind into it. They want to reach this goal. If they succeed, they're going to make some good money, but they're going to also provide what is needed, what the market wants. You as the state, you don't produce anything. You just make the rules. That's your job. And you have, security and whatever enforcement of the rules. Because somebody has to enforce the rules, right? Within certain limits that are your rights. But you need some kind of enforcement. Otherwise, even if you have the rules, people and companies are just going to do whatever they want, right? So that's a job. The rules, how do you write the rules? With democracy. We have a democratic process. We have a parliament. My ancestors, the Romans, they invented the Senate, right? The Senate, you have representatives for different parts of the empire. They're going to vote. That's how it works. That's the democratic process. So the people make the rules. People make the laws, and the state, then we appoint people so that they overview and they enforce the laws, but they don't write the laws. They don't pick the laws. While what the problem we have right now is that we have so many laws, and all these politicians, they can just pick which laws, even prosecutors and all, that's how it works, right? They pick what they like. And they just push. And the other things that they don't like, they just, throw them under the carpet. That's not how it's supposed to work in an ideal, No, so we are very far. We are very far from the ideal, system.
Well, I think as we've touched upon loads of times, that there isn't, again, we're advocates for capitalism and free market movement, and we as we've explained, there are different countries with different systems, different political beliefs, different religions, and I think there should be, if I had to summarize it into a word, David, I'd say that word would be respect. That we seem to be having a lot less respect for different things at the moment, and that's creating a lot of, I think that's creating a lot of challenges. And when I say respect, look at the lack of respect for the financial system. And if we look at, again, sound money and fiat currency, and obviously coming off the gold standard in 1971, and so forth.
Yeah.
Again, as you mentioned off air, I'm sure most people listening to this would know this already. We say that 40% of the US dollars in existence were printed within the last 5 years. I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling.
Yes.
Yeah, it really is. So again, I think let's finish up with talking about where we stand at the moment, because as you said as well, that people still seem to be surprised. Not necessarily people listening to this channel, because everyone's very well educated with what's going on, but a lot of people seem to be very clueless about inflation, where it's come from, and what's going to happen next. So again, what has happened, what is happening, what's likely to happen moving forward?
So I think everybody remember during COVID, these governments, even local governments, they started handing out money left and right. Oh, you have your shop closed, here's like $2,000. Oh, your company is not running, here's like 100,000. And this happened in Europe, it happened in the US. Where was the money coming from? They were printing it, okay? They were just creating debt. They were just, that was federal, that's new money, right? Fake money, okay? New dollars. Those were new dollars. But at the same time, so the money supply, it grew by, we saw like crazy numbers, almost doubled, because like 40% they just printed into like the last 5 years, as you said, right? But the quantity of products and services that you can actually buy with fake money, it didn't increase proportionally. So even if it increased, let's say, like to be generous, 8% in the last 5 years, the money is like 40%, the dollars in circulation, the currency units, that's how they're called, right? Currency units. So you have like an imbalance, like way more currency units going after the same or almost the same amount of products and services that you can actually buy.
Mm-hmm.
Then what is the natural result of this conclusion of this reasoning? Inflation. Prices are going to go up. So because inflation already happened. Inflation is not when you see prices going up. Inflation is when you are inflating something. You can't inflate prices. Prices, they're going to rise. You inflate the money supply. So the moment and people like me on Wall Street, I was talking to people, everybody knew, okay, we're going to have a lot of inflation in the next few years. Everybody knew. This was because there's no other solution. When we saw all this money being printed, everybody, like, it would be like, everybody knew, okay? Anybody working in the capital markets, we knew. It was just a matter of when and how much, how quickly, that was like more the value, how fast this thing is going to come at us. We don't like it, but how fast, how bad it will be. Not if, but when. Some people, they made huge bets and they lost a lot of money because they thought, oh, we're going to have all this inflation, blah, 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 blah. Markets are going to crash. Guess what? Markets didn't crash and they lost a lot of money. But that's, the bet they made on their investments. So the markets, you see now, like, markets are the highest, but you talk to any average American, they're going to tell you, yeah, I'm not desperate, but I remember times when things were definitely better than now. Then why are the markets at the highest? Because the premise that when you have high Dow Jones, high SP 500, it means that you have a good economy. It's wrong. That's a wrong, starting point. That's a wrong start. It's fake. It's false. We had periods in the last century, like in the 70s, where in the US you had all kind of economic problem, like stagflation, oil supply problems. People were lining up for, to get gas. They had all kinds of problems. They had inflation like crazy. And the markets were at the highest. Other times during history, you had a crazy good economy, thriving economy, very low unemployment and business growing and everything. Everybody's happy. Everybody's making money. And the stock market, believe it or not, at the lowest, or not at the lowest, but you get the idea, like, it wasn't growing because the market is not a representation of what the entire economy does. Why? Because 90% of the US stocks are owned by 10% of the people. So it's not about the decisions that everybody makes. It's the decisions that people who have money in the stock market makes, and portfolio managers makes, and investment banks makes. Okay? So, I wouldn't look at the stock market and use it as a politician and say, oh, look, when I was, during my term, the stock market was at the highest. It means I did a good job. That's really, I'm not rolling. Some people, maybe they will believe it because they are naive and they don't really know what we're talking about. But that's factually not true. So you can't judge. You look at some countries, Robert. I think Pakistan is a good example. You wouldn't say that Pakistan is a wealthy country. Even a Pakistani would tell you, no, sorry, but we're still growing. We are still a growing country. We have a lot of problems. We're not like the US or even Switzerland, right? Pakistan. You look at the stock market sometimes of these small countries, Zimbabwe, they have crazy high stock markets growing like crazy at the highest and everything. Then you look at the economy, it's like real bad, okay? And that proves my point. The stock market, it doesn't, stocks can be manipulated, stocks can be hyped. Stocks, it's a lot of things happening, guys, behind the curtains in stocks. So we can't really look at the stock market and say, oh, the economy is doing well. And that's, I think, solves the confusion that some people in the US, when I talk to people in the US, they say, how come the stock market is, every week we're breaking records, but the economy, I don't feel like I'm wealthier. I don't feel like I have more money than before. I don't feel like I can afford more than before, like in real, concrete, practical terms. So that's the answer, because you're measuring it the wrong way. You don't measure an economy based on the stock market. So that's really, the the conclusion there.
And again, something I definitely agree with. By the way, thank you for splitting that, what I like to call economics 101. You've just made that with inflation and the currency printing. You've just made that so simple that I'm hoping if people are going to take away one lesson from this episode, it's that sometimes you just got to keep things very, very simple, very basic
Yes.
with levels of
You have
understanding.
to. You have, but you talk, one thing I noticed. It's not really about simple, it's about clarity, right? You listen to these people at the highest level in this business, not highest in terms of money or power, but highest in level of competence. Okay. You listen to Warren Buffett, you listen to these people, they talk that in a certain way that seems simple, but they actually get into the heart of the problem. It's extremely clear, right? And when you can explain something in a simple way, in a sense, it's because you really understand it.
Hmm.
I would give this advice to people listening. If you are confused when somebody is talking about these topics, stop listening, or listen to him again in a few months, because you're not going to understand by listening to somebody who confuses you. Okay, maybe the level is too advanced for you. Maybe the guy is just confused and he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just saying some ChatGPT, buzzwords. So don't trust, don't trust buzzwords. Trust your instinct, because when you hear it from somebody who tells you like it really works, it's just gonna sound okay. Now I understand it. It's just makes sense, right? It just makes sense, and you think about your daily life, it just makes sense, right? So that's also an advice. Don't listen. And the highest people in competence, they talk in a simple but clear way, right? And today, I think you have so many ways to fact check everything, and you shouldn't trust anyone, including me. Okay, don't trust anything I say. Don't make any investment decision based on anything that I said, because these are just my opinions. I could be wrong, right? I'm a human like anybody else. Yes, I have access to a lot of research from Wall Street. Yes, I have access. I talk to a lot of people. Yes, but that doesn't mean that I'm that I hold the truth. No. So you have a lot of ways to fact check. Even today, I use AI. These not really AI language, large language models like Grok or ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity. I use it to fact check it, and they're pretty good. Sometimes I just put some text inside of it, and I ask, "Can you fact check this?" And it's gonna search on the internet, and it's gonna give me some kind of is it how far from the truth, or what established, not established, but like the truth it really is. You can do it with my own stuff, or anything that you hear. I would do it. Listen to the other side of the coin always. I always listen to the other side of the coin. I listen to these crazy Marxist people talking. I listen to them. The fact that I listen to them, it doesn't mean that I agree, right? But I listen because I need to understand their point of view, even if it's BS for me, but I need to understand it, right? So, I mean, it makes me sad when I listen to some of these people, for them, because to be so wrong in life and to be also so arrogant about it. So you're not just wrong, but you're also arrogant, and you want to tell other people that maybe understand it better than you, and you want to tell them, so it's complete like embarrassment. It's total, it's a cringy, it's and you have videos on YouTube, that you can clearly see the people provoking these protesters. And I remember when
Yeah.
you had that protest and people were protesting on Wall Street, like on Wall Street, and saying they had that slogan about Wall Street. I don't remember, like something regarding like Wall Street was bad or something like that. I don't remember. It was like after the great financial crisis. And one of these people from Wall Street, he actually went there and talked to these protesters and told them, why are you protesting here? All these banks, they've been saved by Washington. You should be protesting in Washington. Why are you coming here to Wall Street? These are like people just working here. Why are you blaming the banks? You should blame the government. The government saved these banks. The government did the bailouts using taxpayer money. Why are you protesting there, right?
Yeah, I think knowledge is power, as they say. And
Yeah,
I
but these are
think,
not bad people. Okay, these are
no,
not bad people. But some of them, they're bad. Yes, they're really bad people. But some of them, they're just naive, right? Uneducated sometimes.
Well, that's the joy of doing podcasts like this is to, have honest and open conversations and to get people's opinions on different things. And it's, that being said, David, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today. So I've certainly learned a lot listening to yourself. I always like to give guests the opportunity to tell the audience, how people can connect with you. Obviously, you mentioned Galileo FX at the start and your social medias.
Yes.
I'll link to all of these in the show notes on YouTube and Substack as well. But how do people find out more about you? How do people connect?
So first of all, Robert, thank you so much because this was probably, one of the best podcasts I've done and the most fun also for me because I'm really, I really like this stuff. I've been studying it for many, many years. I have my own collection of books. So it's also my personal, I'm not just here as the CEO of a company, but also, it's something that I believe in like deeply, personally, right? And all my life, in my entire life decisions, they revolve. So I put my money, where my mouth is, as they say in the US, right? So I'm not just preaching, but I'm also doing everything that I say. For example, the education of my children is gonna be, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna pick
Mhm.
the teachers. I'm not gonna send them to state, whatever, public school, whatever. Okay. So that's one of the, different, one of the things, the ways I apply all these rights and all these things that I believe in, because I don't want my kids to go to a school and maybe they get brainwashed by some, ideological teacher. And everybody knows today that schools are, they're just like ideology now. It's part of school. It's like in front of your eyes. You would be blind to not see it. Even a blind person can hear it. So why would you send your kids, and have them brainwashed by these leftist or capitalist professors? I would never send it. So that's why I really enjoyed participating in this podcast, because it really, we got a chance to discuss about these very important things for the life of people, not just making money. Oh, how can I make more money, more money, more money? It's also about more rights, more freedom, not just more. What do you do with all this money if you have no freedoms, if you have no way
Mhm.
to spend it? What do you do with all this money if you don't have anything to buy and you have like 3 products on the shelf? Nothing, okay? You have to go to the US or to some capitalist country to buy some good things and to spend it on some things. Like, wow, yeah, I'm going to have fun with this money, right? So it was really a pleasure, Robert. I really appreciate it. You were like, it was great talking to you. Regarding my business, I started this company after working for an hedge fund, for an investment fund in Toronto, Canada. And we were trading $3 billion a day in US equities, the US stock markets, some of the biggest, volume traders.
Mhm.
So I've been, in the capital markets for many, 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 many years. And then I started my own company. I resigned because I want freedom. Okay, Robert, I don't want to, I appreciate people working in a corporation. No problem. If that's good for you. But for me, I wanted different. I think there is more to life. Okay. So I resigned and I said, I'm going to start my own business. I know the market. I know what works. I know what doesn't work. And I started this software company, and we created this automated trading software, which is called Galileo FX. And basically, also, we apply all these values that we talked about. Guess what, right? So you have total freedom on how to use the software, and we have total transparency. So it's not like one of those black box automated trading software, but you can actually customize it based on your risk preference, based on your goals, based on what you are comfortable with. Because I saw that some people, they are comfortable with really high risk, high reward trading styles. Other people, they don't want to lose even a dollar if it's possible. They're okay with smaller gains, but they don't like losses at all. They don't want any risk. Maybe they don't have any time. So we created this software that, yes, it's automated, but you as the user, you can give it direction. Okay, it's like a ship. You just send it to the right direction,
Mhm.
right? So you decide as the user, because why? I believe in freedom. So everything, is consistent, right? I'm a consistent person. So this software has been a great success. We have 15,000 customers globally, a lot of them in the US. We have offices, even if they're still small, because we started just 4 years ago. But we have offices in Tokyo and in New York, because those are like the big financial places now. And now we're gonna release more software, more products, but everything, like about what we said until now. Okay, everything is consistent. We are very transparent with people. We tell you what it is, what is not. We don't guarantee any performance. We don't manage your funds. We don't give any financial advice. We give you good advice so that you don't lose money. But at the end of the day, it's up to you, right? It's your decisions. We have some people that they ignore our advice, and they're free to do it, right? I don't want to force anyone. I believe in freedom. And I believe you give the software to 2,000 people, to 10,000 people, you're going to have statistically like 100 people, 200 people making a lot of money with it and finding ways to make a lot of money with it. Maybe they're going to teach it to other people, whatever, right? So I believe in giving the tools and then let people figure out how to use the tools. We are not in the business of, giving investing in recommendations or playing, in that gray area where we give some kind of advice, but it's not advice. No, we don't give advice, okay? We show you 500 strategies that were successful across different markets. You can decide, I want to use these strategies, these other strategies. I want to create my own strategy. I want to edit this strategy. I want to try it in demo. I want to go live with it. I want to put $100. I want to put 100K. Power, it's the user should be, the person in charge. I believe, in that when it comes to investing, because I've seen it. I've seen normal, average people, even without college degree, succeeding in trading and succeeding in investing. So I've seen it with my own eyes, and I think people can actually do it, but they need the right tools and the right education, right? If you just listen to some YouTubers or some influencers, maybe yesterday we're selling like a drop shipping course and today they're selling a trading robot. Come on. What does this guy know about, capital markets? It's like a joke. Come on. You wouldn't take medical advice from these people. Why would you take financial advice from these people, right? So use the right tools, listen to the right people, become financially, literate, understand personal finance. It's not rocket science, guys. It's not. Just find, the right, education and the right tools, and you can succeed. It's not magic. That's it.
No, absolutely, David. And as I said, it's people wanting to connect with yourself and Galileo on social medias. Where would they
Well,
find
we
you?
have
Website,
Galileo
etc.
FX. The software is called Galileo FX,
Mhm.
like the Tuscan scientist, because I'm originally from Tuscany. And Galileo, he was one of those people. He, actually, we're talking about rights. He had the right scientific, breakthrough. He got killed. Imagine that. He had zero rights. He was right about, the stars and the planets and the sun and the church. They killed him. Imagine that. He had to pay with his own life for his freedom of expression. And he was right about like a major scientific, breakthrough that changed humanity.
No,
So
absolutely. It's
imagine that.
yeah, no, it is crazy stuff, to be fair, David. But as I said, it's people can find Galileo FX on Instagram,
Yes.
Facebook, or also
Yeah,
on
we don't
X as
use social
well.
media that much because, social media for our kind of product. Yeah, we have pages, but the best is the forum that we have. We have a forum,
Mhm.
okay, with over, I think, almost 5,000 users of Galileo, and they are discussing, results. I'm, getting good results with this strategy. I'm getting bad results with this other strategy because, different people are going to have different results. Okay, the software it doesn't promise results. It doesn't exist like a software that can magically print money. The Federal Reserve, they have this magical software, the power to print money. We are just normal people, and we created a software, and we created the best software that we could create. And some people are making money with it. Some people, they're still trying to figure it out. Some people, they gave up because I don't know, they don't have time or whatever. So, it's just a tool, okay? But if you take it seriously with some education, you can make it work and you can make money with it, okay? Even starting from small capitals. You can, I said, okay? Not you will. So I don't want anybody blaming me. Oh, David, you said I was going to make money. No. Okay.
Thanks for that disclaimer. Well, David said it's been absolutely fantastic. I'll put all the various links in the post on Substack and
Yeah.
YouTube as well. And yeah, really enjoyed that conversation and look forward to speaking to you again in 2026.
Yes, I would love to, even to do a follow-up episode to see. I mean, even if I was right, if I was wrong, or what happened in the meantime, if you could ever predict it, who knows? Maybe like in 6 months, who knows what could happen, right? So it would be great to do another episode, Robert. I really, really appreciated the time with you. I thank you so much also for letting me speak. And yeah, we talk next year and we stay in touch.